All right, welcome to our last session of Bacon 2021. So this session, one attendee will be randomly selected to receive a Yeti backpack cooler valued at $300. And once again, we just want to thank all of our sponsors for Bacon 2021, IBM, Incorda, and Ingram Micro. So onto the presentation. I'm going to introduce Rory Cornelius. Rory has been working with Cognos products since the halcyon days. I don't know if I pronounced that right, Rory. You'll have to correct me. Of ReportNet, along with a few years of Java development mixed in. When not solving problems for clients as a senior solutions architect at PM Square, you'll find him living in the troll capital of the world, Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, where he enjoys spending time with his family, attends Brewfest, and following Chicago sports teams. In his presentation, Rory will show that with a bit of technical know-how and some coding, you can create your own custom viz, deploy it to your environment, and start using it in our reports and dashboards. This workshop will take you from the local development environment setup to deploying your own visualization. So take it away, Rory.
All right, thank you, Leslie. So kind of got the background there, but I've been working with Cognos for a while. I've also done some coding on the side, so this custom visualization thing kind of hits my sweet spot. Being able to create new visualizations and pull them up into Cognos, I think it was just a really cool thing when IBM released this functionality. I know the coding part of it can sometimes scare people a little bit. And it does take a little bit of technical knowledge, but hopefully as we kind of walk through it, things make a little more sense, and people that are at least somewhat interested in it could kind of take it on to the next level. Kind of as Leslie said, I'm a senior solutions architect at PM Square. Been here for 6.5 years now, working on a variety of things. So before I get too far into the presentation, I know there were a few prereqs that were set up on the Whova site. And hopefully anybody who did want to follow along and code along with us has kind of looked at those and got things downloaded and has their environment kind of set up and ready to go. But just in case, this is another chance for you to go out, download these things. I kind of added a code editor at the bottom there that wasn't necessarily in all the prereqs that went out. You could use just standard Notepad, but I think Notepad++, or especially like Visual Studio Code, gives you a lot of functionality that comes benefit if you're gonna do this sort of thing. They do syntax highlighting and makes it easier for you to be able to code, which is probably another call out on the Whova website. If you haven't noticed yet, if you go to the session and scroll way down to the bottom, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, there's a worksheet, a handout that you can download that has all this information in it. And so that's why we also wanted there to be 2 displays if possible. So you can pull that up on one side and step through it with me on your other screen. And that has all of these different links in it. So you can pull that up to get the links instead of trying to copy them from my presentation here. All right, so now that that little bit is out of the way, so why would we want to create a custom visualization to begin with? What's the point? Cognos comes with a bunch of visualizations. Aren't they good enough? And yeah, for a lot of cases, they do the job just fine. But there are instances where maybe they don't have all of the chart options that you want. Maybe there's some, something you see somewhere else, or maybe in like Tableau or Power BI or something that you wish Cognos had this chart and it just doesn't. So that's where a custom visualization comes in. You can add things like more interactivity. So if you want to, click on a particular part of the chart and have it pop up an entirely different window, or you can even do charts inside of tooltips, or a lot of different type of interactive functionality or animation. A lot of the Cognos charts do have some animation built in, at least the newer ones do, make them look a little bit more modern. But you can add in all kinds of different animations with your custom chart. Custom tooltips is a big one that I hear about a lot. Cognos, in any version of Cognos charting that they have, just the tooltips are tough to use and are limited in what they can do. I know it's been on IBM's roadmap to provide more functionality around tooltips for a while, but just hasn't come out. So as an example, if you look over here on the right side, this is a waterfall chart that a client came to us and said some of their customers, some of their people that were using their environment were starting to use Power BI for this waterfall chart that they were really liking. But the IT team was trying to pull them back into Cognos and trying to get them to use the functionality that was there. Well, Cognos does have a waterfall chart, but it doesn't have anywhere close to the functionality that the Power BI one does. It's just, the setup is difficult. I don't know if anybody out there has tried to use it, but it just doesn't work the way you would expect it to. And so part of that is that they wanted to be able to pick, well, in this case, it's show me the top 4 categories, and then anything below that top 4 lump into an other bucket. Well, that's kind of useful to be able to tell that these top 4 are, you know, there, and this is what makes up the rest of the smaller pieces. But when you can do a custom tooltip, I was able to, well, provide the differential, this 21.4 million, show the kind of before and after, the 2011, 2012 number, percent changed, and then also break down the 3 different categories that are lumped into this other bucket, providing a lot more context, a lot more information than just having that there. I mean, that's just kind of one example of where a custom tooltip, but I'm sure anybody can think of several where you may want to include some different type of information that isn't actually shown on your chart. Conditional formatting is another one. It comes up a lot, or including images. Like this chart at the bottom, it's a weather chart, but you could use, you know, a sunshine or a snow cloud or whatever that is down there for markers. You know, you could use arrows, you could use whatever sort of icon that you want to be able to kind of highlight particular pieces of the chart that, I mean, there would be no way to do that in Cognos. Responsive design is another big one. For anybody who was listening to the keynote this morning with Takeda, one of the things they said is that they went back and used the legacy charts for a lot of the different charting options that they had out there. And that's because the properties and the configuration and everything is set up on those that you can make them look pretty modern. You can make them look nice and provide the data, but they aren't responsive by default. They don't get bigger or smaller based on the size of your screen. But with custom visualization, responsive design is kind of just assumed at this point. Any new charting technology is going to include that. Basically, anything is possible. You know, it just depends on the time and effort that you want to put into coding, but you can make it behave or look however you would like. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about why we might want a custom visualization, I thought it would make sense to do a use case that kind of gives us an example of a case where we may want to look into doing custom visualization. And in this case, with the NFL season kicking off here in a couple of weeks on the 9th of September, I thought using some NFL data might be, I don't know, something different than Go Sales that anybody using Cognos is used to seeing. So in this case, I was thinking, let's look at third down conversions based on how far it is to go and the play selection. And I know we have an international audience here, and maybe not everybody likes American football or understands it, but essentially you get 4 tries to go 10 yards. And so if you don't make it 10 yards in the first couple of tries. The third one is important because if you don't make your 10 yards, then you'll have to do something different on fourth down, depending, either punt the ball back to the other team or kick a field goal or something. So third down conversion rates is something that a lot of stats people look at a lot. So for example, on third down with 4 yards to go, is a run up the middle more successful than a pass to the right side of the field? So, I mean, that's some interesting data, and you start to think about, like, okay, how would I display this in some sort of visualization? When I come across a problem like this, usually the first things I look at are, okay, line chart or bar chart. And I know there was a poll out there on the Whova site, and I was kind of looking at the stats on that a little bit before this started, and the majority of the people picked our bar chart and line chart, as expected. Those are, the standard, easy to see, great to visualize things. So, okay, could we take this and put it on a line chart? Well, the line chart typically is showing, information over time or showing a trend. This isn't exactly, doesn't exactly fit into that. So, okay, how about a bar chart? Well, bar chart shows values across a bunch of different categories. So we could create a different bar for, different distances to go, and then, maybe break that bar down by whether it was successful or not. But then we'd also have to break it down by the type of play, the direction of the play. It becomes complicated and too many layers to really be able to see in a bar chart. So after that, what do we do? So I found this website. I don't know a whole lot about it other than what I can see here. Let me pull it up over here so you guys can see. So I don't know much about it other than I found it and it seems useful, and it's just a guy, I think, who put together a whole bunch of information on a bunch of different charts. And I don't think it includes everything out here, but it has a lot, and it has a lot of good information and ways to break them down. So one of the things I really like is if I click on search by function, it gives me a breakdown of different ways that you may want to look at data. And if we start to think about the use case that we have here, we think about, okay, so we have a distance to go, we have a play type, we have a play direction, and we have success or failure. So there's a lot of different layers that we want to look at. So it kind of falls into a hierarchy, right? You're trying to look at the overall picture and then break it down into the different levels within this hierarchy. So if we click on that, we get 4 different options. Well, a tree diagram kind of stands out. Okay, that's like an org chart. Yeah, that's hierarchy, but it doesn't really fit for displaying the data. So we're left with circle packing, sunburst diagram, and tree map. Well, a tree map and circle packing, if you're familiar, they're both similar concepts. One is just rectangles and one is circles. They start on the outside and then kind of split that whole piece up into individual parts based on the different layers of information. And they work well for a lot of things. In this case, I personally think the sunburst diagram fits the use case very well. I know it has some problems and people stay away from pie charts and donut charts because it's hard to tell the angle to determine, the different sizes of the segment. But in this case, when we're talking about a lot of different layers, I just like the fact that the total is in the middle, and then however many layers we add, it just sort of expands to fit our needs and to fit the different levels of information that we want to see. And then you can easily see kind of the path that you have to follow to get down to the lowest level. So today we will work on creating a sunburst chart. So now that we've kind of determined what kind of chart we want, next up is looking at the different charting libraries that we could use to be able to create this. And there's a lot of them out there. There's a ton, but D3 is the probably most popular. It's the one that all the IBM documentation points to and steps you through creating. It's very customizable. You can do basically any sort of visualization you want with it, but it's also the most complex. I don't know if anybody has taken a look at it or is comfortable with it, but there's just a very difficult learning curve. There's a lot to learn. It's almost an entire separate language to itself to be able to figure it out. The next option I have up there is Google, which I don't know, a lot of people probably don't even know, but Google has a charting library out there that you can use. And it's pretty easy to use. It keeps everything pretty simple, but there aren't a lot of properties to be able to set to change things. And but it's definitely one to take a look at and a possibility. It's also D3 and Google are both free. D3 is open source. Google retains their source code, but it's free to use for commercial all use. And then kind of the happy medium between those two. I put in high charts and fusion charts. Both of them are very customizable. I think both of them are actually based on D3 behind the scenes, but then add a layer on top to make it easier to configure. Less functions, less things that you need to call, but still offer a lot of functionality. Both of those do have a license fee for commercial use, but it's pretty manageable for most companies. Just one other call out I wanted to make as we're kind of talking through this is IBM does have quite a bit of documentation out there around custom visualization. So if you're kind of stepping through this process yourself, make sure that you look in the developer guide. It steps you through creating a D3 visualization. It doesn't take you through like high charts or any of the other libraries, which each kind of have their own idiosyncrasies to be able to put together. There's also the API out there that gives you details that you'll need to know if you're actually creating it, and then a GitHub repository that has examples of quite a few different charts and different technologies or libraries that are used. All right, so now that that's out of the way, this is the sunburst chart that we are going to try to put together today. I decided the high charts version was the best, or at least works the best for this. Just for informational purposes, if you go out to the high charts website, they have a demo tab with, well, if I click on this, we can go and look at all of the different charts that they have available. That's another good place if you're trying to figure out what chart to use for a particular piece of data or what charts are out there. This is a place that you can go. And on each one of these, you can see the functionality. They give you examples out here of how it works. And then you can also go to down at the bottom to edit in JS Fiddle. And that gives you a little bit of an insight into the actual code and data that's required to create this chart. So yeah, it's just an interesting place to look, a good place to grab source code and get examples of the different types of objects that you're looking at. Looks like this page is a little bit slow to come up here, but yeah, you can see the type of data, the structure of the data, and actually even edit the code here if you want to play around and see how things work. So with that being said, let's jump over to our handout. So hopefully you guys all have this handout downloaded, are able to pull it up and take a look. Kind of as we start this, let me get out of here. Let me let everyone know that, you know, with this being a workshop and with us kind of trying to do this together, feel free at any point to put in some comments or questions. I'm happy to answer along the way. I'll try to take some some stopping points to let people catch up, and I'm happy to go over things in a little more detail if there are questions. Okay, so first up is the prereqs that hopefully everyone has done to this point that does want to step along. Go out to NodeJS, download, install. It installs pretty quick. Make sure that this node -- version command will work in your command line. Pop up a command line. We should be able to get some number back. And then download this custom biz.tgc file. This is going against an environment that we have spun up for today's workshop, but any Cognos environment in 11.1 or 11.2 has this file available to download. So if you're doing this in your environment, just replace the beginning part of this URL with yours, and then leave the BI.js Vita custom biz TGZ, and you should be able to download the file from yours. They're all the same. I mean, I think the idea is as the Cognos version goes up, this may also get a newer version. So try to download the one from the version of Cognos you're using, but there's nothing specific to your environment in that file. Once you get that downloaded, go ahead and do this NPM install. If you're on Apple or Unix systems, you may need to use the sudo command to be able to do this install. And then once that is there, you should be able to type custom biz -- help and get a list of all the commands. That's how you know that it's been installed. Okay, next up, a text or code editor. Like I said, you can use just standard Notepad or maybe even WordPad or something like that that's on your computer already, but something like Notepad++ or especially Visual Studio Code, which I'm going to use Visual Studio Code today just because it's the easiest to see. It provides some syntax highlighting for you. It actually tells you if there's an error in your code before compiling it. It's a true development environment for code. So if you haven't gotten this, I would suggest downloading code or at least Notepad++. If you're not looking to do code in the future or already have Notepad++ in your environment, that should be fine. All right. So once we have that kind of initial setup, we want to create our custom viz. So once you open your command line, you can go into a projects directory or make a projects directory. You could also do that in File Explorer if you're more comfortable. Just navigate to the same location, and then I created a projects folder that I'm going to work in today, and then you can type cd projects. And for those that don't use the command line all the time, if you start typing something, you can hit tab for it to autocomplete. And once we are in our projects folder, then we can type this command. You can copy from the document here or type it in. You don't have to use your name in it. I'm just doing that so that if we deploy this to the environment later, everybody can see which one is theirs. So once we do that, you should see generating projects, done generating projects, and then it tells you to start developing, navigate into this folder, and then type custom viz start. So I do cd, start typing in tab, and then custom viz start. And what this does is goes through and installs all the dependencies, which at this point it just creates a base folder structure for you. If I come out here, we can navigate into the folder just to see what it looks like. And this is, it generated all of this for me. Okay. Move this out of the way. While that is installing dependencies, typically that's a pretty quick process. Hopefully it's working for you guys. You can open this Cognos environment that we have available. The link is in the worksheet, or it's just cognos.pm2analytics/biz-workshop, and it should bring up an 11.2 environment here for you. Let's see. I see a question here. Is Cognos service free? Well, no. You'll have to talk to IBM about Cognos service. Do you have any code for creating a race bar chart? I think they need to be DS3 files. So I've looked into creating a race bar chart. I know that's one that comes up a lot. It is proving difficult. I've attempted to put it together. It doesn't have to be D3. You can do it with high charts theoretically. The way IBM passes the data into the chart causes some difficulty there. It's still on my list of things that I'd like to put together, but I don't have it yet. Is prompting possible like in recording? Yes. Yes, once we get this done, it will behave just like a built-in visualization, just like any like Cognos visualization. All right, this took a little bit, but we have it. This is what you should see once it is started. It generates some files, and then once it says started a local server on port 8585, that's what we're looking for. Okay, back to the Cognos environment. For anybody who hasn't seen 11.2 or played around with it, this is an 11.2 environment. Feel free to take a look around. You have to click on the little burger menu up here, and then click on New and Dashboard. So we'll create a new dashboard here. Just the default is fine. And once we get a dashboard up, at this point we don't need a source. We can just click on the visualizations icon and custom, and you should see the test visualization light up. You can click on that and drag it into the panel. And what that test visualization is doing is looking for a NodeJS instance running on your machine on port 8585. So it's going and hitting this, which is executing our code that we have put together and creating this visualization. So if you see basic viz bundle here, that means it's running our code and that process is working. Okay, so next up, we need to include high charts into what we're working on here. So we'll come into here, into your command line and do a Control-C. And then it says stop the local server, and you can either do Y and enter or hit Control-C again to stop the service. Right. Next up, we want to open up the code. So I'm going to jump into Visual Studio Code. You could also navigate to it in File Explorer and open it up in Notepad++ or whatever editor you want to use. In code, first thing we want to do is make sure we're using the right folder. So I go to File, Open Folder, and in project, I want to make sure I have this Rory custom sunburst that I created. Looks like it's on it. And then, before I get into that, we need to run these NPM commands. So just for anybody following along in the worksheet, I am in the add high charts library to your project. And we want to copy these and run them one at a time in our command line. So copy that and execute. What it's doing now is going out and pulling in all of the libraries and all the files necessary for high charts to run. Next up, the next one is high charts-more. And this is, high charts just packages some of the functionality into a separate library. Depending on the type of chart you're doing, you may or may not need the more library or module, but in this case we do. And then one last one, we want to do -sunburst. And not all of the charts have a particular module that you need to install. A lot of them are included in the regular default one, but for sunburst, we do need to include this. Okay, now that we've done those, we want to look at external DTS. So if I pull it up in here, you can see there's only one line in it right now. And we want to grab the two lines from the document and paste those in. And so it should say declare high charts, declare module high charts / high charts more. And this is just a file that's needed for it to know to go out and access these. So once those are updated, you can save your file. And then we next up want to look at the package.json. And the thing we're looking here in package.json is under dependencies. We want to see that high charts more, and high chart sunburst are included in the dependencies. When we run the NPM command, they should get included in here. It should just automatically update this package.json file, and it looks like it did, but we just wanted to confirm. Okay. So now that that is done, we want to type custom viz clean. And what this does is removes all of the dependencies just to start clean, start fresh, and make sure that it's pulling in all of the high charts dependencies that we need. And then we type custom viz start for it to go back through and pull down all of the dependencies that it needs. Okay, while that is pulling down those dependencies, I also wanted to call out that on in this handout, I have save points all along the way. So this takes us to save point 1. And basically what I have out here on this PM2 download site, we can pull up. Let me open it in another tab. Copy our password. Once we get to this page, we can drop in the password from the document. And we have a list of zip files. And so right now we're at step 1, zip file. If you have something messed up at any point along the way and want to be able to start clean at the end of any of these steps, you can feel free to come out here, select whichever one you're at, click download. And then if we do that, we can open the file it'll be called your name dash custom sunburst, but that's okay. And then we would just want to unzip this into our projects folder, and you'll just have to switch your command line over to using this one, and you'll be at the same point as where we are. So just you'll see those spots along the way, just an easy place to grab it. And then this custom sunburst pack will be one that if we aren't able or you're not able to complete yours, you can download this custom sunburst pack, and this is one that we can actually deploy to any Cognos environment. All right, so this is started. So we know that it was able to pull down all of the different high charts libraries. Okay, next up, we want to navigate to the renderer folder and open main.ts. And main.ts is where all of the code is going to go for today. So this is, you'll see it's a .ts file, so that's TypeScript. People probably have heard of JavaScript more often. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript that is optionally tightly typed for people in the coding world. Basically, that means that in JavaScript, any variable is generic, but in this one, we can define like this node parameter is an HTML element type. You can use all the same syntax as you do with JavaScript, but it just adds some extra functionality being TypeScript. Okay, so from our worksheet, we want to copy where it says update the import statement at the top to the following and paste in this. And so what we have here is import a bunch of different objects, and this is coming from that custom viz library that we downloaded from the Cognos site. So these are all in the IBM API. So there's a couple of links either in the presentation or in the workshop that you can go look at the IBM API, and it gives you more details on what all of these are. We won't use them all today, but I like to import them all just in case I need them at some point. And then it imports the different high charts libraries that we included. And then these two lines are just tying the more module and the sunburst module to high charts. It's just something that's required for the high charts functionality to work. All right. Okay, after that, we want to come down into here and we want to do a private underscore chart :any, which you can see and copy from the worksheet if you would like, but it goes inside the class, but above the protected create method. And this just is creating a chart variable that we can use later on. Okay, under create, so we see this basic viz bundle, and that's what we were seeing in Cognos when we were testing. So all this is saying is underscore node is the box or the square on the dashboard that is what this refers to. So it's just passing in, here's the place or the HTML element on the dashboard of where you should put the chart. And in this case, we're just saying text content equals basic viz bundle. So we're not going to need that now that we have high chart coming in. All right. Okay. So next up is step 6. We want to add the high charts object. So I'm just going to replace this create method with the one from the chart. For some reason, it seems like copying from the PDF doesn't format here. So if you are using code, I know you can right click and go to format document, and it will format it all nicely for you. And so here, what we can see going on is it's saying that this chart variable to high charts dot chart. So calling a chart method on high charts, passing in the node element so it knows where to put this chart that it's creating. And then it passes in an object that handles all the configuration for this chart object. In this case, we're saying type is sunburst. We're giving it a title that just says this is my chart. And then a series, which is the data elements that goes into the chart. We're passing in an array of numbers. And in this case, I'm just passing in 1, 5, 3, 7, 6, just a group of random numbers that get passed in for some test data. Okay, and then we want to save this. And if we come back to our command line, if you saved it, we should see that it said started building the sources. So as long as this is running, it's always looking back up to our folder structure for any changes. So as long as it says finish building the sources in some number of milliseconds, we're good. If there was an error, you might see an error here indicating that there's something wrong with your code. Okay, back to our custom viz here. In this case, it's still pointing to the same place, so we can just click the refresh button up at the top. And you can see that now we have what kind of starts to look like a sunburst chart, or I guess really more of a pie chart at this point. It doesn't have any nice labels, it's just kind of putting something out there, but it does have the values that we passed in. It has tooltips, you know, hover functionality. But one thing you might notice is that it doesn't resize. If I resize this, it stays the same. So next up, let's move on to making the chart resizable. So this is save point 2, if anybody hasn't made it to this point. And again, feel free to jump in with any questions if I'm going too fast or you're not understanding something I'm going through. But so next up, let's make the chart resizable. We'll pull our code back up again. And we're going to add an update method. So copy it from the PDF, and underneath this create method, we want to add a update. And I'm going to go ahead and format this again. Looks like, space there. Oh, nope, space here. There should be a space between let and update options. It shows up on the PDF, but for some reason when I pasted it in, it didn't come included. So make sure that you have spaces between your words up here. And what this is saying is when anything is updated in Cognos, it calls this update method. So initially it calls the create method the first time it's displayed on the page. And then anytime something changes, it calls the update method. And it passes in this update info object called _info. And if you look up update info in the API, you can find out some more information about it. But basically what it's doing is it has a reason attribute of why it's been updated, and then some more details within that. So in this case, size. So this update was called for the reason that the size changed. We're saying if the size changed, then I want to set the width of my chart to info node client width. So as remember up here, node is the element on the dashboard that gets passed in with the info, and we're pulling the width from that. So basically we're saying I want to update my chart width and height to match whatever the width and height are of the widget size on the Cognos dashboard. And then down here, this is just saying that if there are update options that have been set, then update the chart with those options. And these are basically just there to tell it to be sure to redraw. So once I get those, I can save. You can check back in your command line, make sure that it's built again. Come back out to Cognos, hit refresh, And now you can see it changes size as I adjust the size of my square out here. Right. That is save point number 3. So next up, right now it's still just using the data that we've passed in. It doesn't help us a whole lot if you have to hard code the data in your chart. So let's see what we can do to allow us to add data from Cognos. So connect data part 1. At this point, we want to open the vizdef XML file. And kind of as the name implies, this is the definition of the visualization as far as Cognos is concerned. Right now, there's only a couple, 3 lines of XML in here. And we can copy the XML from the document, paste it in. Again, this doesn't really format too well, but we can kind of do this quickly as we step through, and I can explain it. So first up is slots. You need to define slots, and these are what tell Cognos to open up a drop zone on the dashboard or on the visualization. Just like, you know, if you are using a native one and you drag in a data item, it has a spot for you to put your measure, to put your category. And that's what we're doing here, is saying, all right, give me a spot to drop categories, give me a spot to drop values. And we define the type. Type equals cat is categorical. So what you would use for categories or you know, different dimensional data. And then this type is CONT for continuous. So this is a measure type or some sort of number. And we're saying both of them are optional equals false, so we need to include both of them. And then down here is data sets, and what this does is take this slot that was defined up there and tells the library to include this information when it passes it to the visualization. So basically saying when the data comes into our main.ts code, make sure that you're including the data from slot categories and the data from slot values. All right. We want to save that. And if we come back to our command line now, since we updated the vizdef and not the main.ts, it just says generating vizdef.xml. And in this one, there's no indication of when it actually completes. It just says that, and you just kind of assume that it was working. All right, back to our visualization. And if we hit refresh now, you can see the visualization goes away, but on our fields over here on the right, we now have categories and we have values that we can drop in. Which takes us to adding a source. So if we click select a source on the left, go into data, there's only one thing out here. It's the 2019 NFL game data. We add that. And then at this point, we could basically drop anything into our values here. So if I do, say, play ID into values and down into categories, well, now it looks pretty familiar. That's back to the same chart that we had before. Well, it kind of makes sense. So it won't let us display the chart since these were required until we provide something, but we didn't actually tie these references to anything in our main TS. So next up, we will tie those together. All right, so this is Connect the Data Part 2, if you're following along in the worksheet. So we want to remove this series line from our create because this is our hard-coded values. We don't want to include those anymore. And then in our update down here underneath of our reason.size, we want to include, format again, this new if statement. There's one more. And so this if statement is saying if the reason that update is being called is because the data changed, then set a new series item with the data from a transform data function. And you can see it has a red squiggly line under here because we haven't defined the transform data function yet, but we will. And once we do, it is taking the data.rows. So saying, okay, here's the object that Cognos passed in. We're looking at the data attribute and pulling all of the rows that Cognos is passing in out of this object. Okay, so step 7 of that is this transform data function. So for this one, we're putting it outside of the class. So right above the imports here, paste it in, and we can format. And so I'll tell you, this is the most complicated part of this whole process. So what this transform data function is doing is taking the data that Cognos passes in the format that Cognos is passing it in and turning it into what HighCharts is expecting. So in this case, HighCharts is expecting something that has an array of objects. Each one of those objects has a name, an ID, a parent, and a value. And so we need to go through all of the different rows that are coming from Cognos. So that's this data set that's being produced from Cognos based on the fields that we provide, and turn it into something that looks like this. So you can see it's not a lot of code. It's just whatever 10, 15 rows of code. But it's iterating through all of those different rows and different categories, and then in the end, adding one object to this result object and returning it. So in the end, we end up with an array of all of the different rows. Name is just the description that gets included. ID is used behind the scenes. Parent is points to the parent, so we can keep that whole hierarchy that we're looking for. In this case, total doesn't have a parent. It's the center part. And then a value. If we're out on a leaf node, we need to provide a value. Okay, so if we save this, in your command line, you should see it says finish building the sources. And we click refresh. Okay, so at this point, we can see that this down and play ID is actually getting populated in here. So we have first down, second down, fourth down. At this point, it's kind of just like a donut chart, but you're able to see that in 2019, in the NFL, there were 45,546 plays. 15,000 of them were first down. Okay, on the questions, not completely sure how to add the custom visualization. Not sure if I should be seeing a visualization by now. Yeah, hopefully most people are seeing the visualization by now. If you have the code running, you should be able to come out to visualizations here and custom and see test visualization and drag that in to see what you've been working on. If you are behind or don't have that, we're at save point number 5. So you can go out to the link in here, download save point number 5, unzip that, and then you can open it and we want to unzip this into our projects folder. At that point, you could open up your command line, navigate into this, and type custom biz start, and you would be able to start from this point. Hopefully, most people are following to this point. All right. So at this point, we have a semi-functional chart. We can drag in categories, we can drag in values, and we're able to see those on our visualization. So next up, we want to add properties. Properties, well, on any visualization, you have the properties tab in Cognos. And we have a set of properties that just come by default under the visualization, but we can also add any of those that we would like. We go back to the bizdef.xml, and under add properties in the worksheet, should be able to copy the property section. And you can see here, we're adding a group called labels with caption label properties, and then a Boolean property for show chart title and a string property for the actual chart title. We're defaulting show chart title to true, and the default value is my chart for our title. Okay, so we save this. And like before, this is just setting up the visual part of it in Cognos for us to be able to set these. But until we actually add the code to use them, it won't do anything. So back in main.ts, if we copy from step 5, we want to go to our update method and add one more if statement here. Format it, and in this case, we're saying if the reason this update is being called is the properties changed, then add a title attribute that has the text, and this is just a shortcut for an if statement. It says if the show chart title Boolean is true, so if we have it flagged that we do want to show the title, then use the value from the chart title text property. If it's false, then put in null. So don't show a title, basically. If we save this, go back to our visualization and refresh. Now we see over on the right that we have this label properties section show up. And if I don't want a title, I can unselect show chart title. If I do, I can type in another title that says this is my chart, or turn it off. And you see the chart updates automatically as I update my properties. And I mean, that's just one example. You could have other properties for colors, different fonts or text, fonts or font size, or color of the text. You can add a whole bunch of different properties in, which is where the configuration or configurable comes in, that you're able to put in whatever properties that you would like. All right, that is save point number 6. So we're moving on to the more configuration section for those following along in the worksheet. And in this case, we want to open up our code again. And we want to pull in this color by point true property. So this is happening in our update function under the info reason data if statement and within our series. So right here above where it's calling data, transform data, we want to put in this color by point true. And I have a link out in the worksheet here. Let me pull that up just so that we can talk about it a little bit. So this is just an example of the HighCharts API. It's available out on their website, but it gives you the option to look through all of the different methods and all of the different functionalities that's available within HighCharts. So under sunburst type, color by point is what we're looking at, but there's all of these different properties and configuration options available. Just, you know, as if you're getting into this, you'll be spending a lot of time out on that API website. But in this case, we're just saying color by point is true. Save it and come back out here and hit refresh. And now you can see that instead of everything being blue, HighCharts is just kind of randomly adding some colors to our different objects. Okay, so let's see. So we have here first down, second down, third down, fourth down, and then this NA, which anybody who's familiar with football, you might be kind of wondering, okay, so what is this NA? And something that we can do is go back to our sources here. And we can add in play type. So if we drag play type, let me get back over to fields over here. And if we add play type under categories, now we can see it adds another layer to the outside of our sunburst. And under NA, we can see things like kickoff and extra points are included in this one. So just kind of, you can start to see how the sunburst can take shape. But for anybody who does any sort of visualization, all of these different colors going on is a bit much. It's a little bit hard to follow, you know, which one is under which and how to kind of go down, especially colors matching. What does that mean? So colors in a visualization are an important part. So let's go back to our code and we can grab the code from step 7 in here that will help with that. So this is the entire series section. So if we take the series here, leave the if statement on the outside, we can paste in everything from that document. So it should say if info reason and then have our update options.series. And basically what it did is remove that that color by number variable or attribute that we had in there before, and we add in this levels. And so this is a little more specific to a sunburst, and it's just saying that on level 1, so the center of the sunburst, that it's white. Level 2, so the next layer outside of the center, we can still use our color by point and set that to true, so that it will still go and pick a color from its list. And then for level 3 and 4, instead of doing a whole separate color, we're saying use a variation and vary the brightness. For level 3, go down to -0.5, and for level 4, go up to 0.5. Don't need to know exactly what those are, but it's basically just saying vary the brightness of the color from the parent level. So if we save that and go back and refresh. Right, now we, something wasn't right there. Oh, okay. Here we have an example. I have an error in my code. Okay. Let's see, what did I miss? Looks like, let me come back up here and grab this one more time. Right, format. And I need a closing bracket. There we go. All right. Yeah, save that. Hopefully now, yeah, started building the sources, finished building, so we have everything correct. Come back here, do our refresh. And now we can see that it at least kind of retains the color. It's a little bit weird here, second and third down, kind of kept a similar color, but at least we can see that the kind of children below the first level are similarly color coded with a varying brightness. Okay. Just to kind of help with that coloring option, we can specify our own colors. So if we go back to our worksheet, step number 9, under info, reason, properties, we have our text object here. We can also add in a color option. So these are just a few different colors that I found that seem to work well together. I think would work okay for this, but you can put in whatever color codes you would like. If we save that, go back to our visualization, refresh. Now we at least get a little bit different color scheme for us to be able to see the breakdown between the different groupings. All right. Hopefully everybody's still kind of following along here. I know getting a little technical and into the weeds here, but it's I don't know. It's interesting, especially for people who have coded before. I know kind of looking at this code for people who haven't, maybe a bit overwhelming, but it does kind of break down, and we don't have, I mean, we're still under 100 lines of code to be able to create this visualization. So I just think it's pretty interesting how much you can do with just such a small amount of code. Okay, so next up, we are on the third down conversion analysis part. So we kind of have our visualization set up. It looks like a sunburst. We're able to, see the different sections. Now that we kind of have a basic visualization here, let's try to start to play around and see what we can do with it. So we will remove our categories here and start clean. And so the first thing we want to add is this yards to go grouping. And basically what I did here is I made this grouping in the data module that says if it's third and 3 yards or less, then it's considered short. If it's 4 to 7 yards, it's medium. and if it's long, it's 8 or more yards. So just a way to kind of break down the distance into a little bit smaller piece. Oh, and we want to add in this third down analysis filter. So up at the top here, you can just drag that and add it onto your visualization. And all that's doing is limiting it to only third down that we're looking at, and just kind of the standard play types. Next up, result first down text. We can add in categories, and what this is telling us is if it was a successful or failure. So we can kind of start to see on, well, there were almost 6,000 third downs in the NFL in 2019. Third and short was 1,600 of them, and a fairly high success rate for that. Once you get into third and medium or third and long, it looks like these aren't quite sorted. Let's do custom sorting on this. So one of the fairly new functionality, you can set these to sort and go to custom, and we will just add them in as short, medium, long, just to help us be able to see in the right order. Do that and then hit refresh, and it should come up in the right order now. Okay. Go. So, I mean, even this is kind of interesting. You can see more success on third and short, which you would expect, fairly even on third and medium, and then a much higher failure rate on third and long. Okay, next up, we could add play type. So if we drag play type and drop it in the middle here, you can start to see, okay, third and short on a run has pretty high success. Third and medium, well, it looks like NFL teams are pretty much always passing. There's only a few runs happening here on third and medium. And then we could also add in play location, and we'll drop that underneath play type on top of result first down. And now we can start to see, we're starting to get a lot of information out here. We can turn off the Cognos title, Smart Title 2, just to give us a little bit more space under properties. Set that to no title. But we still can't exactly drill down and see. As these kind of start to get smaller, I kind of want to be able to get into a lower level to be able to see these individual pieces. So to do that, we need to add one more property to our code that says allow traversing tree is true. So back in the worksheet under allow drill down, you can see the code, and then under if info reason data, right above our data here, you can paste this in for allow traversing tree. And another just property that's available in high charts, nothing that we have to code specifically other than to tell it that, yeah, go ahead and allow traversing. So save that, refresh. And now if I want to see on third and long runs, I can click on run, and it drills down into it, and I can get a better look to see the success and failure rate based on that. If I want to go back up, I can either click in the center, or it gives me this back button, takes me up a level, and lets me see just for third and long. I can see a breakdown of pass versus run, or click back again, and I get back up to the top level. All right, so basically at this point, we have what would be a pretty basic sunburst chart that we can add in however many fields, however many categories that we want. We can use it for different functionality. One thing I wanted to call out here is that it comes built in with dashboard prompts that interact. So under teams here, there's this POS team, so team with possession of the ball. So if I drag that in, we get a list of teams. And So let's say I want to look at Baltimore. I happen to know that Baltimore did pretty good on third down conversions in 2019. So you can see the difference between like this team, or if we pick something like Washington, and as you kind of watch it update, you can see a little bit of the differences. So if I take off one thing that kind of jumped out at me as I was looking through this, if we go back to having no filters, you can see that on third down and medium, if you do a pass up the middle, the success rate is fairly high. If you look at a pass to the left or to the right, failure is bigger than success. But they also don't do very many passes up the middle. Not very many teams do that. I mean, there's reasons for that, but it's just kind of interesting that third and medium, a pass up the middle actually results in a higher success rate. If I look at Baltimore, for instance, you can see that, well, they pass up the middle a lot on third and medium and kind of maintain that same success rate. So I just think it's an interesting visualization for you to be able to kind of look at that and compare, be able to see, you know, break it down and understand. All right, so at this point, the only thing left to do, that we kind of have our visualization created, we have the code ready to go, is pack and deploy. So if we come back to our command line interface, we can do Control-C and Y to stop it. You can do custom biz pack. And what this does is pulls all the source together into a zip file that you're able to deploy into any Cognos environment. So if we come out here, and we can go to, if you have admin privileges, you can go to manage and customization and custom visuals. Click on upload custom visual and navigate to your folder. And we should have a your name custom sunburst pack zip file. Well, or we get an error uploading it. But in any case, at that point, you should be able to upload your custom viz to your environment, be able to play around with it, and then it will show up. Looks like my browser might have frozen from that. But it will show up on the visualization tab under custom. Here. There we go, under custom. So once it's uploaded, you can also add a custom visual through here. It will show up as available down here. You can use it just like any other visualization that's in Cognos. All right. I know that was a lot of it. Let's see. Question. Are these custom visualizations mobile compatible? Yes, they are. They come as responsive by default. So they behave just like any of the 11 Cognos 11 visualizations. They're able to be used in mobile or whatever size screen you have. All right, I think that's a wrap for me. We were able to go through, create this visualization. Hopefully it was interest to you. Like I said before, you can still go out if you kind of got lost in the middle. I know we went through a lot of information pretty fast. You can go out to that PM2 download site that's linked in the document and pull down the packed version from here, and you can save that and use it in your environment. And then you have this visualization handout if you want to step through it in any more detail, kind of on your own and work through it. I think all of the information is pretty well laid out in there. But yeah, if you do run into issues going through it, feel free to reach out, let me know, and I'm happy to work with people to figure this out. So thank you.
All right, Rory, thank you so much for that training. And like he said, feel free to reach out with any other questions that you may have about this. So thank you all so much for being part of Bacon 2021. That concludes our day 2 of the conference. Please watch out for any upcoming newsletters with the Bacon Prize winners, information about accessing all of the recordings from the sessions, and any other resources. Also, be sure to fill out our post-conference survey for another opportunity for an entry to win our PM Square Bacon 2021 Grand Prize. And if you have any questions or comments about anything that you saw or heard in the past 2 days, please feel free to reach out to us via our website or via email. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next year.